So today I'm going to talk about the data-centric workflow, but now with a Sparkle agent. You know, the Sparkle agent. All right, and specifically I'm going to talk through just kind of to tell the story. It's going to be an agricultural data set called crop and weed. So I had initially done this. There you go. Yeah. Does this work still? Yeah, good, cool. All right. So yeah, by the way, in case you forgot, my name is Harpreet Sahota. I'm a hacker in residence at Voxel 51. I've been with the company for about 2.5 years. Prior to this, prior to being at Voxel 51, I've worked at other startups like Deci AI, which was acquired by NVIDIA, and then also Comet ML and Pachyderm. And even before all this, you know, I was doing machine learning before it was called machine learning. I studied math and statistics in grad school. I worked as an actuary for a few years before becoming just a statistician, clinical trial statistician, before data science was even a term. And then all of a sudden, data science became a hot term in like 2018, so I kind of got a job with one of those titles and been doing deep learning for about 4 or 5 years at this point. So yeah, hack in residence at Voxel 51. So what that means is that I spend a lot of my time in the open source community, working with open source data sets, open models, building integrations in 51 with data sets, models, and different developer tooling things. And also just literally hacking the product and just breaking it and trying to push it to the to its limits and keep up with modern times. So it's a pretty fun job, pretty cool job. So I was invited to give a talk by the IEEE. Are you guys familiar with the IEEE? I think most people here are. So they asked me to come and do a talk, and the constraints were this. It has to be about an agricultural data set, and you have to talk about 51. I was like, all right, well, I can talk about 51, but I've never worked with agricultural data sets before. So I spent like a week just kind of researching agricultural data sets, and an artifact of that process is this blog post here. Which covers various agriculture data sets in various modalities. It gives you a high-level overview of those data sets, as well as code to download it from Hugging Face and start working with them in 51. So definitely check out that blog if you're interested. And you know, let me know what you think if it's useful. Anybody here work in agriculture by any chance? We're in Chicago last week, and you know, Chicago being in Illinois and being in the heartland, there's quite a few people there that were working in agriculture, but surprised it's not that big here in London. But it doesn't matter because we're not going to talk really about agriculture because we're going to talk about data-centric workflows with Sparkle agents. So agricultural data sets have a lot of maybe specific, maybe more general type of realities that we might be familiar with, right? You might have field photography with the same crop that's growing again and again, and they're getting shot in rows, right, in a few kind of meters apart. And you know, a result of this is getting a lot of kind of duplicate frames, right? So this is something that you might be familiar with. You might have a handful of common crops that dominate a farm, and then weeds that are, you know, kind of show up once or twice in a entire season, which would lead to what? No, this scenario when you have a bunch of class labels of one type and not the other type, of class imbalance, right? I should say, I do have limited edition hoodies that I'm gonna toss out if you answer my questions, all right? So
class imbalance you were talking about.
yeah. You get a t-shirt. All right. So yeah, if you participate, I'll toss you, I got 4 of them. So more.
One's gone.
Okay, 3. Yeah, I got 3 of them now. 1 medium, 1 large, and 1 XL. All right. Yeah. So class imbalance is a thing. That's something that we're all familiar with. Annotations are usually done manually by different people at different times. So of course this leads to a lot of kind of inconsistencies in labels. Then you also have different lighting conditions, different soil types, and this could lead to, of course, domain shift, right? And of course, these are all issues that are going to affect what your model sees and ultimately the performance of that trained model. And so a way to kind of overcome this or discover this is through something called data curation, of course. So the whole thesis of Voxel 51, if you got stickers, data, eat models for lunch, right? We have a bunch of stickers back there. It's because the thesis is that, data curation beats model complexity. But the thing is, like, it's kind of drudgery work. It's not fun. It's kind of boring. But it's actually, fun to do if you use it with a Sparkle agent, right? If you're doing it with an agent, it becomes because then you're able to easily explore a data set. You can, catch these edge cases and kind of nuances in the data set a lot easier. It becomes more like solving a puzzle in real time. So for one of these limited edition hoodies, I'm curious, will somebody share what their kind of workflow is like when they're exploring a data set initially, right? Let's say you're working on a brand new problem and you've got a data set that you're about to explore. Like, what do you do? What are your steps? Yeah. Yeah, and usually that process is probably something like this, right? You're like opening up files, you're clicking around, you're looking at your images, and you're like, oh, cool, nice. Oh, right, this bounding box, right? Like, yeah, this is great. This makes complete sense, right? And so you're looking at your images with your annotations, and you're trying to make sense of it in your head, right? It's hard to do. But nowadays maybe you have, cursor, and you just ask an agent to do it for you, like help me visualize this data set. Can't be bothered to write code anymore. And so you'd ask it to go ahead and do that, and the agent runs off, does a thing, burns probably like $30 in tokens.
Is that you frantically typing the?
Yeah, that's me, yeah. That's at 4x speed though, so it's quick. And so yeah, you burn all these tokens. And you get maybe something like this, right? You got like, the overview there, just kind of forwarding it here. You got something like this, you've got a plot, you've got your labels, you got even your mask. Like, mask still is black. It's not like easy to understand what's going on with the mask. But that's not really, I don't know, man. It's not fun. That's drudgery. That's drudgery work. That's not fun to do. But if you use 51, it becomes more fun because now you've got your labels, your metadata, the media kind of all in one place. So you're able to very quickly kind of see everything all at once. And by the way, it's an open source library. All you got to do is pip install 51, which is written on those limited edition sweatshirts that you'll get if you answer questions. And you're off and running. We have dataset importers for the common dataset types, but if you've got a custom dataset format, your agent can figure out how to do it quite quickly. But we have skills for importing datasets, which you'll see, and becomes even easier. But this already is just an improvement over the previous workflow of opening it and kind of manually inspecting everything. So the data set, just kind of a high-level overview of the data set just to get us familiar with what it is. It's the crop and weed data set. We have 8,034 images, 112,000 hand-drawn annotations. So this was captured across 4 growing seasons, over 929 recording sessions. Supposedly, every plant has a bounding box. There's keypoints that are supposed to be perfect, and then there's full per pixel segmentation masks. Also, various metadata, as you can see here. There's condition tags that describe the soil, the lighting, the moisture type, and then also the separability of that, of the different components of that plant. So this is the data set that we're just going to look at a high level. And if you're interested in playing with the data set, it's on the Hugging Face Hub, along with the SAMA data set and other very cool data sets. So you can check that out there and download it, just pip install and follow that, and you're able to do that. If you don't feel like installing 51, you could of course just scan that QR code, and for the first time ever, you can run the FiftyOne app inside of a Hugging Face space. So scan that QR code, that'll take you to a Hugging Face space where you'll work with the exact data set that you're looking at here. So if you're curious about getting more hands-on with that, then you could do that. So of course, like, there's a lot more you could do in 51 besides just this kind of viewing of the annotations, the metadata, and the media in one place. There's a lot of more granular in-depth analysis you could do, compute embeddings and kind of see what the images look like in embedding space. You could do model evaluation and build dashboards and things like that. So a lot of bread and butter stuff. But I want to focus on something that's more cool that you can do with 51. Specifically, two things. One is the 51 agent. So you're going to explore a data set just by kind of talking to it in plain English and without having to write code. Because typically the workflow before the 51 agent is maybe you write there's the 51 SDK, you write your code, do your analysis in the SDK, and then view the results in the app. But with the agent now, you're able to see everything kind of all at once, just all in natural language. And then secondly, there is in-app annotation, which I'll show you, and these are both kind of new features in 51. Annotation in the open source for sure. The agent is currently only enterprise, but hopefully we plan to push it to the open source. Okay, so the 51 agent is built on two kind of separate pillars, skills and MCP. Okay, this is a question that will get you a limited edition hoodie. Anybody want to tell me what a skill is? Yeah, definitely different from like prompt engineering, right? It's more like an onboarding document that you would write maybe for a new teammate. So you outline the goal that you want to accomplish, the prerequisites, the exact sequence of steps you need to execute, and then perhaps if you're kind, you might leave some hints for what might go wrong and kind of prevent the agent from taking those wrong steps. Yes, and on the point of tools, there's MCP, right? Model Context Protocol. Anybody want to define what MCP is? Yeah, but like, yeah. that is what it is. It was, yes. Wait, no, actually, I'm sorry. I saw his hand up there before. Exactly, yes. Open standard that was developed as, somebody said back there, by Anthropic, and just gives your model a way to kind of connect to external tools, right? External tools, data sources, and services through kind of a unified interface. And skills kind of are complementary to MCP because rather than kind of defining the live tool connection, you have like the skills that packages these instructions, the context, and all that, so that a model kind of knows what to do with it, right? And how to call those tools. By the way, my colleague Adonai wrote a really good blog that goes deep into kind of like the lessons he learned building the 51 agent. So Adonai is the genius, the brains behind the 51 agent. So recommend reading his blog. He kind of shares some lessons that he's learned, and the key lesson being agent's only as good as the tools that you give it. But anyways, let's continue on with the 51 agent. So as you can see here, the 51 agent lives inside the app, and it ships with this kind of configuration that you could change around here. So you can see here we've got the configuration back here where you can actually select the different providers that you might want. You can customize your instructions. You can give custom user instructions and then like specific instructions for that data set. And then you could also kind of see high-level usage and get those kind of metrics for that. And then also there's a skills with there, and the skills are grouped by what they accomplish. So every one of these skills can be switched on and off. Depending on the workflow that you're focused on, you might not want to expose all of these skills to the agent, so you can kind of select which one you want. And every one of these, of course, follows that open specification and the skills empty file. You could, of course, just click on a skill directly to use it. So in this case, what I'm doing is I'm using the dataset discovery skill. And this is just going to list all the 51 datasets I have and gives me a brief kind of overview of each one of those datasets. And then I click on the data quality skill, which will automatically compute like metrics like blurriness and entropy and these OpenCV metrics that you're able to compute automatically. So behind the scenes is just kind of calling the right tools to compute that. But of course, I can talk with the agent in just natural language like I'm doing here. So I'm just asking the language model here, or Claude in this case, give me a quick overview of the data set, media type, label fields, and anything unusual in the metadata. So it's going and it's kind of running skills and giving me an overview of my data set. And during that workflow, when I'm chatting with the agent, I actually saw, interestingly, that there's this class that was very, highly overrepresented in the data set, and it's called vegetation. So I asked a, follow-up question, why is this so dominant? So it gives me, the agent is doing all this in the background. It's creating the actual histograms for me to look through, and I'm, conversing with the agent and kind of figuring more and more about my data. So it runs an aggregation, opens the histogram panel, tells me what I'm looking at. I see that I have 84 classes, over 100,000 detections, and then one giant problem, right? That giant problem is the class imbalance for vegetation. It's nearly 30% of everything. And that's kind of alarming, and so that made me turn to the paper. And as I read the paper, I found out that, actually, it's just a fallback class. It's not like a real class. It's, it's a fallback. And so then the agent is offering here to filter out those labels for me, and in one click, it builds this view for me that excludes all of those vegetation labels and gives me a better sense of what the class distribution is for my bounding boxes. And of course, no code, just all natural language. And so I asked the agent to go a step further in the conversation, and instead of one I asked it to build me a dashboard that I could actually work with. So it's an interactive dashboard using the FiftyOne dashboard kind of plugin framework. And it creates the dashboard, wires up the plots, and then I can start driving from there. So I can start interacting with the dashboard and kind of seeing it filter down the samples and get like a better understanding of what it is in my data set. And so I take over and I see the label distribution right there. I saw that imbalance that we saw before. Click through, because it's interactive, click on a class in the chart, the grid will instantly filter to just those samples. And now I'm kind of not staring at a bar in the chart, I'm kind of looking at the actual images behind it. And that's kind of the loop. Agent will help me with the setup work, and then I can do the exploring. So frees up my time from having to write a bunch of code to just exploring my data set and really understanding what's in the data set. So here I'm still driving the dashboard that the agent gave me. I know that the data set shipped with some environmental metadata, and that dashboard is kind of breaking it all down. You can see here that I'm looking at the soil moisture, soil type, the lighting conditions. And in this case, as I'm kind of working through the dashboard, I become really curious about the lighting conditions. So I click lighting in the chart, the grid is going to filter down to those samples with that specific lighting condition, and I can see side by side the brightness values that the agent had computed with it, and interactively kind of understanding what's in the data set. And from here, I'm able to see, okay, there's a bit of domain shift happening here. And so taking it a step further, so I had the agent actually compute embeddings on the data set for me. So leading up to this creation of this plot here, I just asked the agent to compute embeddings for every single every single image in my data set using a clip model. And then I'm visualizing that, the points in embedding space. And so every shot in a recording session is supposed to be spaced 3 meters apart. And this is to help avoid near duplicate frames. And so I'm kind of verifying this result with the embeddings plot. And so visualizing the embeddings, and then I compute a uniqueness score over all those embeddings. And I noticed that actually, there's one specific session that stands out, and that's the application set 67. The spacing probably was not right in that specific session. And so all of this, again, without having to write any code and just chatting with the agent. So I start to audit the annotations here. So I got a couple of plots here where I'm just manually creating a plot so I can verify what the agent is doing next. So I ask it to find detections with the bounding box that's smaller than some threshold value. And then I also ask it to find those instances where the point, right, we have key points, and those key points are supposed to be the stem, point to the stem of that plant. So I'm looking for those instances where that key point lies outside the bounding box, and which is an annoying query to write by hand. But here, the agent is writing all the code behind the scenes for me and runs the code and builds the view for me. And so I'm able to inspect it a bit more in depth. And so here I'm just demonstrating that the agent can actually just write Python code and execute it for us. So I give it kind of a more difficult query that can't easily be executed using the FiftyOne SDK, which means like it has to actually come up with Python code to satisfy that query. And so yeah, it does it and runs it and then filters out the samples in the panel for me. And so you can see here, yep, gives the code, runs it, creates a view, and now I'm able to see those samples alongside with that view. And this is where I start kind of looking for label mistakes. So I noticed that, okay, it's giving me samples here where I have a stem point that's sitting outside of a bounding box. And so that's, you know, an annotation kind of defect. Of course, the annotations are hand-drawn by real annotators at some point across 4 seasons. And there's bound to be some type of mistakes. And the agent here is helping find those type of annotation errors. And here's just that same workflow again. So here I've got like a meadow grass detection, and it has the same exact kind of defect where there's a stem point that's sitting outside a bounding box. You know, same failure mode, but on a different kind of plant species. And so this is all kind of cumbersome to write code for it by yourself, and having to kind of go back and forth between image and code, and just kind of seeing everything all at once makes it a lot easier. So now that I'm armed with this knowledge that there are some type of annotation errors in my data set, I just asked the agent to create a queue of samples, triage queue for me. And then I go in there and I'm fixing the bounding boxes right in the app. So I'm looking at these boxes. You can see I identify these super, super tiny bounding boxes that are marked as vegetation. And they're, you know, supposed to be that little plant there, but the bounding box is degenerate. It's just like a pixel. And so I resize it and fix it right there in the app and try to clean up those annotation errors. So I fixed the box, and that's great, but I can also do the same thing with a mask as well. I think I have one more sweater. What's the difference between a bounding box segmentation mask? Anybody? Oh, you already got a sweater, man. Yeah, exactly. So here I'm just asking the agent to help me find those type of, I asked it specifically to help me find scenarios where there was a box but didn't have a corresponding mask. So the mask annotation failed to generate somehow. So I'm doing that all within the app there. Just demonstrating here that we're able to do it with primitives as well. So of course, the bounding boxes, segmentation masks, and keypoints, I could do all that stuff. But I could also fix like the primitives, like for example, soil type or lighting conditions and things like that. So here, like just chatting with the agent, looking at the data and having this kind of loop, I'm able to fix these annotation errors and correct them right there in the app. And once I've done this kind of annotation workflow, and maybe I'm satisfied with the quality of my data set, I can then export the data set and fine tune it on some, maybe a YOLO model or something. Here, of course, I can export the data set myself. In this case, I think I'm going to export it to Cocoa format. And then maybe once it's exported to Cocoa format, I'll write a script to fine tune a YOLO model on it. That was the old way, but now I can just do it all in the app. And so here, did I skip a slide? Yeah, so here is where I actually asked the agent to run this itself. So it's behind the scenes running. Once I've satisfied with how well the data curation process went, prompt the agent to then export the data set and fine tune a YOLO model for me, and it just does it kind of all by itself in the background. And then once that's done, I could use FiftyOne to run an evaluation to see how well my model performed at the end. And so that's what's going on here. So I actually asked the agent to evaluate the model. So that was like the lead up to this. Excuse me. And so I had the agent, once it had fine-tuned the model, notified me that that fine-tuning process was done, and I asked it to run an evaluation using FiftyOne's evaluation routine. and then I'm able to see how well that model performs in different scenarios and things like that. All right, so wrapping up here because we're already running late on time and excited to get to John's presentation. We saw a workflow here with a Sparkle agent, right? And the kind of loop was ingest, explore, improve, and then iterate, right? So we ingested a data set, in this case, the crop and weed data set, and then worked with an agent to kind of understand what's in that data set. Then we explore it. We found imbalance, domain shift, we found redundancy and embedding space, and then we improved it. We used some geometric metrics when we were looking at bounding box area, and fixed annotations right there on the spot. And then that loop of exporting and fine-tuning and evaluation, that's kind of that iterate process there. And so all this was done without really having to write any Python code or FiftyOne code, just all right there in the app, and we're able to see the results live right in front of us. So I'm going to go in depth, more hands-on technical workshop in a couple of weeks. You can sign up for that. This is a virtual workshop. So what we'll do is we'll start with just an unlabeled data set. We'll bootstrap some labels, we'll fine-tune a model, run the evaluation, and kind of go through this workflow. Not with an agent in this time. This will not be with Sparkle's agents. It'll just be with code. So join me for that if you're interested. It should be about an hour and a half or so. If you're interested in learning more about FiftyOne, if you are, it's an open source library, right? Just pip install FiftyOne. If you'd like to have us come out to your university or to your, with your team to show you how to use FiftyOne, the open source library, be happy to do so. I've done this multiple times, literally all over Europe. So please come and scan this, and I'm happy to come out there and hang out with you guys and show you how to use FiftyOne. If not, at the very least, maybe we can connect on X. So go ahead and connect with me on X.
Let me just leave that for the moment. Data-one.
Yeah.
This is also free of charge.
Yeah, completely free of charge, of course.
Probably got a good contract by Must.
Yeah.
Are
Yeah.
we also ordering pizzas on these workshops?
Yeah, hopefully Uber doesn't cancel the orders.
Yeah, take that. All workshops include pizzas from Harpreet.
Yeah, like pizza is like, to me, like that's like I like to do like bowls and like I like to feed you guys well. Pizza is like, I was in a rush, I need to get food here quick, and didn't even come here quick, man. So yeah, but usually it's like it's not pizza.
Agents were slow, bro.
Yeah, agents were slow, man. They were.
Blame it on the agents.
Blame it on the humans, man. Yeah, I would never make my pizza late.
Yeah,
But yeah, please come in or please scan this if you're interested. I'll be happy to host a workshop. And of course, please connect with me. I'd love to stay in touch. That being said, that's it for me. And I want to get right into John's presentation. I know we're running up on time. So thank you guys so much for being here.